Welcome back to Rapture Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Morning light always reached the east wall of the glass house first, and Lillian Harper woke every day at the exact moment the sunlight touched the white stone floor beside her bed. The house was designed to have no shadows, Marcus had said when he first unveiled it to her. Transparency meant honesty, openness meant peace. Yet the house never felt warm. The air carried a quiet echo, the kind that lingered after conversations never spoken. Lillian moved barefoot across the cold floor, pausing at the long dining table already set by the automated system Marcus insisted on installing. 2 plates. 2 cups. Always perfectly aligned. Yet Marcus rarely sat long enough to drink his coffee while it was hot. He entered in a press suit, speaking into a wireless earpiece, nodding at investors only he could hear. He kissed the air near her cheek, never quite touching skin, and reviewed construction figures instead of asking how she slept. Lillian listened, as she always did, because listening was the role she had learned in their marriage. She built homes for history, and he built futures for strangers. When he left, silence returned immediately, like a curtain dropping after performance no one applauded. She drove to the opera restoration site she had spent the last year rebuilding, where dust and time felt more alive than her own kitchen. There she met Eleanor Whitlock, the elderly caretaker who had refused retirement because she claimed abandoned places remembered the people who left them. Eleanor watched Lillian measure archways and gently asked if her husband admired her work. Lillian answered yes out of habit, but the word felt unfamiliar as she spoke it. Eleanor only smiled sadly and said buildings didn't crumble suddenly. Neglect arrived first, collapse came later. That evening Marcus returned late, congratulating himself on securing another investor meeting, never noticing the charcoal smudge on Lillian's sleeve or the quiet way she waited for him to ask about her day. Days folded into identical shapes, polished surfaces hiding emotional distance, until Lillian began noticing how carefully Marcus curated every moment, not for happiness, but for appearance. His mother Naomi visited often, rearranging flowers and reminding Lillian how fortunate she was to be married into the Hale name. His father Grant discussed legacy, wealth, reputation, everything measurable except affection. In every conversation Lillian felt less like a wife and more like an architectural feature, elegant, necessary, and replaceable if damaged. Weeks passed until Marcus invited her to a corporate dinner she was never originally meant to attend, a last-minute decision after an investor insisted spouses should appear supportive. The ballroom shimmered with crystal light, and Lillian blended into conversations about property valuations until a scent froze her breath. Soft jasmine with amber, a perfume Marcus had custom-ordered for her anniversary years earlier, discontinued afterward. She turned and saw Vanessa Crowe adjusting Marcus's tie with familiarity too natural to be professional. When Lillian mentioned the perfume, Marcus answered too quickly, saying the company had released a similar version publicly. Vanessa smiled politely but did not deny it, and for the first time Lillian saw Marcus uncomfortable not from pressure but from being observed. The next morning a confirmation email arrived on Lillian's shared calendar. A private island reservation booked under Marcus's personal account for a weekend he had claimed would be spent negotiating overseas investors. She read it 3 times before closing her laptop, feeling not anger but clarity. Instead of confrontation, she changed her schedule and followed the booking information to a secluded marina where yachts waited like silent witnesses. There she saw Marcus laughing freely, leaning against a railing beside Vanessa, his shoulders relaxed in a way she had never seen inside their home. The laughter hurt more than betrayal because it revealed a version of him she had never been given. As she turned away she collided with a man watching the horizon, Julian Cross, who stared at her and asked if she was all right. His eyes lingered on the yacht and then on Vanessa, recognition flickering briefly before he masked it. He said nothing further, only that the sea uncovered truths eventually. Lillian left shaken but thoughtful, and that night began researching Vanessa quietly, not to punish but to understand. The discovery stunned her. Vanessa Crowe was still legally married, records clear and current, spouse, Julian Cross. Lillian arranged to meet Julian at the docks under the pretense of discussing restoration materials found underwater near the harbour. When she revealed what she knew, he did not react with shock but resignation, explaining Vanessa had left him years earlier without filing divorce because separating legally would cost her access to inheritance tied to marital status. He had refused to finalize it himself, not from love but from principle. Abandonment did not deserve convenience. Lillian explained Marcus's deception, and the 2 strangers realized they shared the same lie from opposite sides. Instead of rage, they formed an agreement, not revenge, but exposure. Meanwhile Marcus prepared his grand resort contract celebration, inviting investors, family, and media to announce a new partnership. Vanessa stood beside him in planning meetings, choosing champagne brands and guest arrangements, while Lillian received only a formal invitation like any other attendee. Sophie Bennett, Lillian's closest friend and a lawyer, urged confrontation, yet Lillian chose patience because truth revealed publicly could never be rewritten privately. On the night of the celebration, the ballroom glittered brighter than any before, cameras waiting for Marcus to present his future empire. He raised a glass, thanking supporters, then placed his hand gently at Vanessa's back in a gesture too intimate to dismiss. Guests whispered approval, assuming Lillian absent. Doors opened quietly behind them as Lillian entered beside Julian Cross, the man Vanessa never divorced, and the room's polished perfection fractured in a single suspended breath. Perfect, continuing the story directly after the celebration entrance, Chapter 10. I will keep continuity exact and move into the fallout, revelations, consequences, and new beginning. Marcus's champagne glass stopped halfway to his lips. The sound in the ballroom did not disappear immediately, it unraveled slowly, conversations dissolving into murmurs as attention shifted toward the entrance. Lillian stood calm beside Julian Cross, not dramatic, not trembling, simply present. Vanessa's face drained of color first, not because of Marcus, but because she recognized the man beside Lillian before anyone else did. For the first time since Lillian had known her, Vanessa lost control of her expression. Marcus lowered the glass, eyes narrowing not in guilt but calculation, already measuring damage rather than emotion. Investors leaned toward one another, sensing scandal beneath polished celebration. Lillian did not raise her voice. She only greeted Marcus politely and congratulated him on the partnership announcement, her tone steady enough to force everyone else into silence. Julian stepped forward, introducing himself with calm clarity, stating only facts, that his legal marriage to Vanessa Crowe remained valid and recorded, that no divorce had ever been filed, and therefore certain declarations made publicly that evening were misrepresentations. No accusations, no shouting, only truth placed gently in the center of the room where no one could pretend not to see it. Cameras that had come for celebration now recorded discomfort. Marcus attempted to redirect the evening, laughing lightly, claiming misunderstanding, yet the investors were not interested in explanations, they were interested in liability. Caroline Voss quietly asked for legal confirmation, and Sophie Bennett stepped forward from the crowd, prepared documents already in hand. The celebration ended not with confrontation but with withdrawal. One investor after another stepped away from Marcus, leaving the ballroom emptier than any argument could have made it. The following morning the city woke to speculation. Marcus remained inside his office tower refusing calls, convinced he could recover control through negotiation and influence. Grant Hale arrived furious, not about betrayal but about reputation, demanding Marcus contain the narrative immediately. Naomi insisted Lillian had orchestrated humiliation intentionally, unable to comprehend that silence had forced truth into the open. Meanwhile, Lillian met Julian at a quiet cafe not to celebrate but to close a chapter neither had chosen. He admitted he had expected anger when facing Vanessa again, yet felt relief instead. The waiting had ended. Lillian realized she felt the same. They spoke of practical matters, legal filings, separation timelines, asset protections. Sophie prepared annulment proceedings citing fraud and misrepresentation, and the law moved faster than Marcus expected because evidence required no interpretation. Vanessa attempted private contact with Lillian, requesting a meeting, but Lillian declined. Explanations belong to conscience, not negotiation. The scandal revealed financial irregularities tied to Marcus presenting Vanessa as a partner in contracts requiring single-status disclosures. Caroline Voss suspended funding pending investigation. Peter Rowland resigned quietly, unwilling to anchor himself to a sinking reputation. Marcus discovered influence did not repair trust once investors sensed instability. For the first time success failed him because it depended on belief rather than control. Vanessa finally confronted Julian outside his marina office, anger replacing her usual composure. She accused him of revenge. He answered calmly that he had only declined to continue protecting a lie she created. Her carefully managed life collapsed because it had required silence from everyone else. She confessed she had stayed legally married for inheritance access after her father's death. Divorce would have forfeited her claim. The admission ended their connection entirely. Julian signed the divorce papers immediately, not out of bitterness but closure. Across the city, Lillian packed her belongings from the glass house slowly, pausing not in sorrow but reflection. The building had never been a home, only architecture. Marcus returned unexpectedly during the process, finally attempting sincerity, asking why she had not confronted him privately. Lillian answered simply that private truth had already been denied for years, public truth was the only language left. He tried to promise change, yet spoke in strategies instead of feelings, and she realized he did not understand loss because he interpreted relationships like contracts, adjustable terms rather than bonds. She left with no argument, and the silence afterward affected Marcus more than accusation ever could. For the first time he stood inside his perfect house and heard its emptiness. Weeks passed as legal outcomes finalized. Marcus lost the flagship resort contract permanently and withdrew from several boards. Grant reduced his influence within the family company to protect remaining assets, and Marcus experienced ordinary consequences without protection for the first time in his life. Vanessa relocated to another city to rebuild professionally, no longer able to rely on social positioning. Julian expanded his marine recovery work, invited to consult on historic ship artifacts connected to Lillian's restoration projects. Their collaboration began cautiously, professional first, yet conversation flowed naturally because neither needed to perform perfection. They spoke while cataloging recovered items, objects that had survived storms, pressure, and time. Lillian realized she was no longer measuring herself against expectations. She worked longer hours willingly, laughter returning gradually, not forced. Eleanor visited the restored Opera House opening night and told her the building finally felt inhabited because its architect had stopped living elsewhere emotionally. The audience applauded the restoration, but Lillian felt peace not from recognition but completion. Some evenings she and Julian shared dinner discussing mundane things, weather, books, plans, conversations simple yet unfamiliar in their honesty. Nothing rushed, nothing assumed. Months later Lillian received a message from Marcus requesting a final meeting at a neutral location. She agreed, not to revisit the past but to end it cleanly. He appeared changed not dramatically but subtly quieter, acknowledging he had mistaken admiration for love and control for stability. He did not ask for reconciliation. Instead he apologized without defense. Lillian accepted without reopening the relationship, understanding growth sometimes arrives after loss. They parted with mutual understanding rather than resentment. Outside the cafe Julian waited unintentionally. He had come to return architectural sketches, and the moment felt symbolic rather than planned. Lillian realized her life had not been destroyed, it had been redirected. She walked with him toward the harbor where restoration materials were arriving for a new project combining maritime history with structural preservation. The future appeared uncertain but genuine, lacking the polished guarantees she once lived inside. She preferred it that way. As evening light reflected across the water, she recognized the difference between a life displayed and a life lived. Her marriage had ended publicly, yet her beginning unfolded quietly, not defined by betrayal, but by the freedom to choose honesty. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.